What do the rest of the world think about Americans? Let's find out. Hey guys, so today we're going to find out if I agree with this video about what people think about Americans. Let's give it a watch.
Can someone tell me why Americans always leave the AC on, even if they go out all day? This question we saw last night posted on an online forum by a disgruntled hotel owner. What followed were reams of insults, generalizations, arguments, peppered with the odd, intelligent, and tempered comment.
I'm pretty sure I did that if I go on holiday.
But it's fortunate we saw that so soon before writing the show. We saw comments along the lines of, Americans are just arrogant and ignorant, as if 325.7 million people were molded into one monolithic entity. Then we saw, I'm American, and I leave the AC on as long as I like. I pay for it. See, people said, they all think the world owes them something. What about the environment? Driving around in their big cars and SUVs, throwing out more trash than anyone, and pretending to care about environmental disasters. This went on and on, with people casting aspersions against an entire nation. Others, of course, weren't so bad, calling out people for having...
I must say it's no different to other countries or America thinking what the UK's like. We all drink tea, we all love the Queen, so it's no different.
A very limited understanding of a country and its cultural and intellectual diversity. But can we make such generalizations? Could we argue that many Americans embrace their individuality and their right to do what they want? They pay for that darn AC, and they will darn well do what they want with it. The fact is, we all sometimes are culpable of whittling down the world to a manageable size that fits within our sometimes uneducated preconceptions. We cannot say all Americans are this or that, but perhaps there might be underlying character traits or cultures, something data, evidence, or experience can provide us with. But in the end, most of us don't rely on data or objective reasoning and rely instead on an image, a construction that we've created out of a wanton bias. Number 5. Arrogance. As we said, much of the world thinks Americans are arrogant. You don't have to look hard online to find this out. We hear that they like nothing more than to plant flags around their houses, and they go on and on about how great their country is. And
that's just Americans seem to be very patriotic, a lot of them. As I said, I'm generalizing just like the video. They do come across as very patriotic and nationalist, especially, it's very 50-50, I suppose, like our country, but in the UK, we don't have the same sort of nationalism. We don't have flags outside our houses. We don't need to. It's just a flag. So that's certainly something that we think.
And by association, that must mean how great they are, even though they often didn't do that much to claim this superiority. As the American comedian Doug Stanhope once alluded, some flag wavers are like imperial hangers-on. Anyway, some people say this is why Americans are often so loud, and don't worry, there are plenty of articles and forum questions asking why American voices tend to drown out others, saying when abroad. We might ask if this has anything...
Quite often see on TikTok, you quite often see the Americans that now live in the UK, and they are very loud. They're very loud. Like, just quiet down a little bit.
To do with that sense of patriotism. The great country, greatest, best in the world, no doubt, better than anyone else, and also the entitlement that comes from a place that espouses expressive individualism at all costs. The loud American is a much better known phrase than the great piece of literature called the quiet American. Forums are full of people talking about these loud people, demanding, expatiating, bragging, complaining, extolling the merits of good old America, and forcing some poor European into a quiet internal violence, wondering all the time, do they not realize they're being obnoxious? Where's the self-awareness? Hell yes, go America. Now this isn't of course true for all Americans, it's a stereotype, but it exists.
It really annoys me, the USA chant. USA, USA. Like, get a grip. Get a grip. No one cares. Like, just so over the top.
If you don't believe us, check it out for yourself. You could be reading for a year, even though it's fantastically unrealistic and arrogant to think the stereotype is true for all people in the USA. What we hope to do is point out such stereotypes, and we can discuss them after the show. Now, on to the next. Number 4. Ignorance. All countries attempt to imbue...
Ignorance. I think the ignorance is the fact that they think some Americans think that America is the only country in the world, or that Europe is a country. It's things like the World Series, like, how is it the world when it's only Americans that are in it? That's from a sporting side especially, it makes no sense.
a sense of nationalism in their people. It's how they get soldiers to fight wars, to believe in the country, to create a sense of belonging and cooperation. But do nations attempt to foster ignorance in people? Well, you might have read some critics saying the American school system is purposely trying to dumb down its citizens. They want workers, robots, not creative, critical, skeptical kids that might ask too many questions. Hail the idiocracy. We're not saying this is true, it's a criticism leveled by some people, but we can say that much of the world thinks Americans are ignorant. Well, to be frank, most of those shows pointing out American ignorance regarding their own nation are made on home turf. But
you quite often find as well Americans admitting to it. They quite often admit that their own people. If you watch any George Carlin, the comedian, who's sadly not with us, he says it all the time. He says it all the time. Americans are so ignorant, and he's an American saying it, you know?
You'll find people outside of the USA saying things like, they don't know anything about history, not even their own. They believe only in their own heroic narrative and think the French Revolution is a roller coaster. We're told Americans are so insular, they are out of their depth when they walk out of the front door. But is any of this true? Listen to this. There's a cult of ignorance in the United States, and there always has been. The strain of anti-intellectualism has been a constant thread winding its way through our political and cultural life, nurtured by the false notion that democracy means that my ignorance is just as good as your knowledge. Those words were spoken by the American scientist Isaac Asimov. But the fact that those words were his means there's a contradiction in terms. America is constantly ablaze with creative thinking. There's a daily conflagration of innovation, thoughtful introversion, skepticism, groundbreaking scientific research, world-changing fiction, reasonable, intelligent discourse appearing in blogs, podcasts, etc. But it turns out a lot of people, including inside America and outside, believe a culture of ignorance is propagated there. Is there any data to support this? Yeah, there seems there is. The Big Think wrote a story in 2013 with the title, Why Are Americans So Ignorant?
But they don't realize it holds them back.
It
really holds them back as a country.
In some cases, most Americans know very little about how their own country works, or worked, and don't even ask about the rest of the world. Weak civics curricula, partisan propaganda, and misplaced priorities of the mainstream media all share some blame for American ignorance, the writer says. But we feel it goes deeper than that. We'll let you decide. Number 3, positiveness and friendliness. We've really been bashing America, so now we'll look at a positive stereotype as equally untrue for all Americans. We must add, though, that when it comes to generalizations of countries, many people harbor a negative bias. How many of you have ever uttered the words, oh, I really don't like the English, the French, the Indian, the Chinese? Just add your nation to the list. We recently saw a comment made by a young American who has gone to study in the UK. He couldn't wait to get out, saying the atmosphere for the most part was grey, unfriendly.
To be fair, I'm fairly chatty with people. You know, I'll always say hello to people when I'm out walking the dogs and things. You know, I always speak and say hello, but it's not, I would be seen as a grumpy person. And the problem is people that are too happy are a bitch. They're just annoying. I'm going on a rant now, but happy people are annoying. You know, just be quiet. Just shut up. Don't want to listen. You know, I'm grumpy, but I'm happy. But yeah, Americans just come across as excitable, like an excitable puppy, and you're just saying, calm down.
Intimidating. Maybe he just went to the wrong place. But one might argue that Americans are in general more open and positive than Brits. We might remember what the dry, wry British celebrity intellectual Stephen Fry said about his trip to the US when he made a show about travel there. He said this sense of outgoing positivity he enjoyed, and he said it's something the Brits were missing. You can do it in America.
That looks nothing like
people are
Stephen
taught
Fry.
that think they can. While back in Britain, perhaps the most downtrodden submit to the fact that life is hard, painful. Where's the beer? What some people call arrogance, Fry said, was partly American optimism, or what he said was a refusal to see oneself in a bad light. He added, if you go to an American bookshop, by far the biggest section is the self-help and improvement. He said people believe that life is refinable and improvable. That's how America works, he said. You adapt and you find ways to improve. You never submit. Hell yeah.
Does this go along with the whole American dream thing, which was created, you know, the gold rush and all that? You know, that anyone can create themselves and make themselves better in America, which I'm not sure is accurate, especially these days. But is that linked, do you think? If you're an American, do you think the whole American dream thing is part of the reason why you're so optimistic? And let me know.
He loves that about America. Take that in your British pipes and smoke it. We think we might add
We
here
don't
that a
all
lot
smoke
of people
pipes.
have experienced this, and while harboring the stereotype that Americans are outgoing and confident, those same people might hold a counter generalization that sometimes this positivity climaxes a bit too hard. It jumps the shark. And then, within this transposition, it manifests as something deplorable to others. It turns into pride without substance, blind faith, a superiority complex that is bathed only in its own ignorance. Number 2, money. It's all about money. If you've ever read critiques on Hollywood versus cinema, you'll find that Hollywood is said to be firstly, perhaps only, a money-making enterprise. European cinema, we're told, is more about the art. In an American film, often the happiest of all happiest endings is when they get away with the money. What else could matter? If you want to make a movie in Hollywood, first show bits of it to the most average consumers and ask what they think.
Everyone wants more money. Everything's about
movie
money.
might be treated
Football,
with intense
it's about
dislike
money.
by more refined audiences.
You know,
It's all
sport,
about cash,
everything about
goddammit.
money.
We won't spend long on this, but America didn't invent capitalism. It's evidently just been very good at it. But at the same time, America embraces free speech, and critics of capitalism and neoliberalism abound in the country. America, the foundation of the United
Free speech, that's a load of nonsense, because most democratic countries, offer free speech. You're not free from the consequences of what you speak, what you say. But that's another thing that is annoying, is the fact that Americans will say, "Oh well, we've got free speech, so we're amazing." But so have most countries. Most developed Western countries. We have free speech. Like I said, you've got to remember these democratic countries also have the consequences as well of free speech. So that's certainly a counter that Americans think they're great because of that, but everyone else has it.
United States was built to have restrictions in place for if or when any behemoth gets out of control and gains too much power. We won't address the complications or merits of this today, but we will say that much of the world of America is overly money-centered, more than, say, focused on happiness gained from other means than merely being rich and having lots of things. Number 1, Americans are all fat. Some Europeans and other citizens of the world like nothing more than to show their own superiority by constantly defaming Americans for their ingrained bad habits and slovenly TV-addicted fast food-related obesity. It is a fact that some part of America has a problem with eating, and this has led to what's called an obesity epidemic that has resulted in widespread health complications. Your average Asian might touch down in, say, Houston for the first time and think they discovered a land of giants. But
I think it's certainly perceived around the world that Americans are larger. I think if you look at the food, or a lot of the food programs, diners, drive-ins and dives, whatever it is, you see the food that he eats and it's all big food. It's all big food. What other programs? Why can't I think of any other programs now? Anyway, you get all these shows that are showing, Man versus Food. You get Man versus Food, and they're doing the big food challenges. You got burgers, chips. It's all the fast foods that come from America. All the deep fried stuff. So I don't think you can blame. Now I've not been to America, so I don't know. But I think the perceived is certainly true that Americans are larger. However, it's proving that the rest of the world is catching up, especially with fast food becoming so widespread and popular in other countries. In the UK, I'm sure we've got an obesity crisis. So yes, it's perceived there, but it's not necessarily just a problem there.
America is not the fattest country in the world. It's around the 17th according to the WHO. It's the fattest Western nation, but a lot of other Western countries are not far behind in terms of obesity. Obesity crises are happening in the UK, New Zealand, Ireland, Australia, and many other nations. We can hardly say the junk food epidemic is an American affliction only. And on the other hand, many Americans are fitness freaks. It's a fitness-conscious country as well as a nation of couch-bound sugar junkies. Just look at popular podcasts such as The Joe Rogan Show, and you'll see that health, longevity, physical
and this is the thing,
it's on the mind of
generalizing, but it's not necessarily
far to say that this new wave of health
it's not necessarily
led by an
true for all. It's a generalization.
The stereotype of fat America is hardly only imaginary. We could have added more to this list, but we feel if we were to debate these stereotypes in the comments, we might leave it here as it could get confusing. Do you think any of these stereotypes?
I think certainly, as I said, if you've listened, you've heard my point, certainly, that some of those are certainly true. That the whole nationalism and patriotism side of things, I don't like. I think is bad for a country, because we need to stop. I'm on the liberal side and socialist side, where we need to start thinking this, I think Richard Dawkins said this, that we need to start thinking about us as humankind rather than just countries creating divisions. We're all the same, we're humans. So I don't like that nationalism, and we get this in the UK, and we've got this with Brexit and everything. But yeah, I think every country has generalizations, don't they? And I think some of these were certainly true for America. Hope you liked, guys. I will catch you next time. Don't forget, like, share and subscribe.